Get ready to bring back to the stage, for the final time this weekend, the man who brought us all here. With a rock star welcome, Mr. Jamie McIntyre!
Grab a seat, feeling great. How you all doing out there? I'm impressed. Big 4 days, huh? Yeah. Remember way back when we started? I said some of you, the reason that you think you came to this program is probably different to the real reason why you're here. Who relates to what I'm saying now? But many of you probably got a lot more than you expected, a lot of different things you expected, and a lot of also the things that you were after as well. And so I do commend you and acknowledge you, because it is a huge effort. Most people aren't prepared to put this effort in, and that's what I respect about each and every one of you. You're prepared to dedicate your time, money, and energy to continue your learning, and that's what it's all about. That's what changed my life, and that's what's changed so many other people's lives. So well done. This session will be fairly short, a chance to really lock all this in, one final process, and then we're going to celebrate and have a party and some drinks afterwards, because I think you deserve that. Is it true? Who deserves the party? Raise your hand, make some noise. After this effort, you definitely want to, because in life it's so critical. We're talking about, I think Craig was talking about it, remember, way back on Saturday morning, about the seventh need is the need to celebrate. I think it's so critical because so many people achieve so much in their life, especially high achievers, but then they forget to actually reward themselves. Celebration is really think of any excuse to celebrate. That's what you really want. And setting up those rewards and those personal rewards and really makes a life worth living and a life worth celebrating. So remember to do that. So what I'm going to do, you'll promise one final strategy to be taught in this session. And that was about the billionaire strategy. But I'm figuring most of you probably learned everything you need to learn now. So we can skip over that if you want. Or do you want me to I can teach it probably, how to be a billionaire in probably 15 minutes flat if you want. Who would like the fast? Okay. So I'll teach you that strategy very quickly. Then we'll do one final process to lock all this in. And then we'll celebrate tonight. Because really this is the beginning of the journey for you. The next 90 days are crucial. Momentum is, jot this down, momentum is everything. That's what you're really after. And so by taking massive action that you've been taking, the next 90 days you can get a lot of momentum. Some of you in the room will be able to completely replace your income and not have to work within 90 days from now. Some of you learned enough strategies already. You know with the equity you got you behind you, renting shares or some other things you can do fairly conservatively with your equity and certainly supplement or replace your income. True? And some of you already have done that. So that for most people, that's hugely exciting. Others of you are in a position where you probably have to do a little bit more work before you get into that, or you're doing a different particular strategy, so it might take longer. Depends what strategy you're using and what you're planning. But obviously you've got, as I said, you have what we call a quality problem now. Is that true? Some of you, before you found out about 20th century, was like, I hope there's just at least one way to become wealthy. Now you've discovered that there's too many bloody ways to become wealthy, and then which way do I do? Okay, can I do all of the strategies, or can I do more than one, or should I just stick to one? And that's some of the questions that you've probably got right now. And I guess there's no right or wrong answer. It's really up to you. It's your life. The reason we make available a larger range of strategies is not expecting you that you have to go and learn and do every single financial strategy there is. The reason we do that is it gives you choices. Does that make sense? It's like a buffet. If you don't like the spinach, but the rest of the food is great, take what you want. Leave what you don't there. Does that make sense? And some of you will come back, and some of you, when you come back, you'll be ready to focus on other strategies as you advance yourself. Okay, so some of the strategies are advanced strategies, because some of you are ahead of others and looking to go to the next level. Others of you are just starting, which you've got more than enough with your hands full of what you've been learning already. So then you might add some other strategies whenever it suits you. Okay, can you do more than one strategy at once? The answer is yes. Okay, depending on the strategy. I do a lot of the strategies, not all the strategies, but I certainly do a lot of the strategies. Some strategies I do that are passive. In a sense, I do stuff with Justin, as you heard Justin speak today. What I love about that is passive. It doesn't take up my time. So I can put a few $1 million in the market, leverage it, protect it, and away you go. So that doesn't take up my time. Real estate, I do. That's fairly passive, because once you've got the property and got the finance, well, then you've got a property manager, and it's pretty much hands off. Okay, so once you've got up and running, well, then you can then free up your time. Shares, depending on the strategy that you do, like for share renting, once you've got your head around it, the first few months you're spending a lot more time on it, getting your head. Once you've pretty much learnt it, then really it is 5 minutes a month, effectively. And then you're like, well, once you've got that under control, you've got more time on your hands, so then you might go, what else can I do? We teach internet and business, which you get access to that if you haven't done that. That's throughout the year. You can attend in different locations, and that's to teach people they want to then develop some other incomes. I think Lou talked to you about how she has multiple incomes on the internet, and we've helped many members be able to generate very large incomes on the internet, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a moment. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. Then you can do the more advanced share strategies, which is really just turbocharging what you do. You know, some of you love to do e-minis, is that true? You like to not sleep at night or something? Some of you love CFDs, and CFDs become very popular, what Daniel would have talked about. Some of you into commodities, Forex. You know, Forex is probably a very fast emerging trend that because of technology, it's now, once again, these are strategies that are only available to high net worth individuals, are becoming more available for the masses or certainly middle class. And so you can actually tap in and access these things. And so it's giving you, I guess, more opportunity. The world has changed and it's giving us a lot more opportunity. So we live in a pretty exciting time in history, don't you think? Yeah. And we live in a pretty exciting country. You know, Australia and New Zealand, we're very blessed down here. So we're very fortunate that you have, it's realistic for the average person if they're willing to put the effort in over time to do quite well. So you have a lot of choices there. There is no right or wrong answer. What strategy you should do, how many you should do, but pace yourself. Do what suits you, what works for you. What a lot of couples do is that why they come to the events together is one of the couple might do one particular strategy and the other half might do a different strategy. That way, as a team, they're able to do more things. Making sense? And that sometimes works well. So if you haven't been able to have your spouse along to the event, it's certainly great to be able to send them along sometime or ideally revisit with them. Who, raise your hand if you're a revisitor in the room? Raise your hand as a revisitor? Give these people a huge hand, by the way. As I said, it's not because they failed the first time that they were told they had to come back. But it's an opportunity now. Does anyone, one of the revisitors, you want to share just quickly what your experience has been maybe the second time around versus the first time? Anyone want to share? Yeah, we'll just hear from two people. Just bring the mics quickly. We're just here in the second last row there. Give me a hand. So, Paul, when did you do the first 4-day event?
We did it in Brisbane.
Okay, early in the year?
Early in the year, 6 months ago. And the second time around, we just learnt. So the first time is just overwhelming because there's so many things to absorb. The second time is just filled in all the gaps.
Yeah.
So we learnt so much more this time because we partly knew it, but there's obviously bits and pieces you don't pick up along the way. So
what do you think? Do you think the second time you learn more than the first time, or sort of both?
Oh, both. It just filled in the gap. The first time was just blew us apart. The second time was just a bit of just made up our minds, and certainly this time it's made realistic, and I certainly know where I'm going now.
Yeah. So give him a hand. That's great. Okay, we'll go over here. Yeah, we'll just see from over here. Give him a hand. So when did you first do the first 4-day?
Yeah, my name's Tom. We did our first 4-day September 07.
Okay, so a couple of years ago. And where was that?
Yeah, Jackie and I came together.
And was that in the Gold Coast?
Yeah, Gold Coast, the Holiday Inn. That's right, wasn't it? Yeah. And then we brought our youngest son to the next one, which is a couple of months later, also on the Gold Coast. Then we took our eldest son in January to Fiji.
Wow.
Brilliant. Had to take him somewhere. He's a school teacher, so that fit in with him.
If you're having trouble convincing you want some people to come and do this event, you always pick locations like Fiji or Queenstown. It's like it makes us.
Yeah, it was tough to take him there.
Yeah.
Totally different to this sort of event. Much smaller. Much less oomph. Much less energy in the crowd.
Fiji and Queenstown are much smaller events, so they're more intimate. So if you want to do an event with a much smaller audience, it's a different experience. Certainly, Fiji we're not doing this year, but Queenstown is in July next year. And that's my favourite event. It's absolute blast.
Yeah, so this is my third one and my wife Jackie's fourth one. And once, as Jamie said, not because we failed, it's just that we needed a boost for the end of the year to carry us on to the next year. But as far as the differences are concerned, the first one, we were totally overwhelmed. Totally overwhelmed. We signed up for 4 different strategies.
You possibly could.
Because the first one was great. The next one was brilliant. The third one was even better. We ended up, after the 3rd or 4th day, we went back and saw the people, the staff, and said, can we withdraw from a couple? All right?
Slow down.
I mean, we just had no money left either to actually implement them. So, but it was brilliant. And as far as, did we learn more first time, second time, third time? Absolutely. And if not learning more, cementing what was put out the first time. And for myself, being a mere male, I can't do 2 things at once. So the writing and listening is hard for me. So, but you're getting there. So every time you tend to write a little bit more, and it sort of comes together. So thanks very much, Jamie.
You're welcome. Give Tom a hand.
Good.
So jot this word down. The word we're after is called spaced repetition. So if you're going to master your life, it's great you can come to one event, you can learn a lot of things, go away, get momentum, take action, and you can do very well. But if you really want to master it and take your life, continue to that next level, it's what you're after is spaced repetition. In other words, continually putting yourself in the environment where you continue to learn over a period of time. So the way with your 5-year membership is designed that you can come back as many times as you want over the next 5 years at no extra charge. So it's designed that way because you can continually come back. I mean, who thinks over the next 5 years, if you come back at least once a year, just to check in how you're going and reset your goals, that would improve your results? Yes or no? Yeah. And if you set that and you said once a year, take 4 days out of your life, I'm going to work on my life, I'm going to learn some new strategies, I'm going to refresh what I've already been learning, check on how my goals are going, what I've set in the year before, and reset for the year ahead. And that can be very powerful to create the environment ongoing, and also to reflect on how far you've come. Because remember the saying I talked about the other day is that most of us overestimate what we can accomplish in 12 months, we will underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade. And sometimes we're hard on ourselves and we think we're not making the progress we want, but when we stop and look back and we go, my God, we've come actually a long way. And you need to give yourself that break and that recognition. Also, the event does slightly change. There's always some different speakers, but even if it's identical, it'll seem different because you'll be in a different space and you'll be focusing on different things. And there's certainly a lot to learn. Is that true? I mean, in each topic we've went through, you could probably go and spend 2 or 3 days on just those topics. And in 4 days, we physically don't have that time, even though we almost try and squeeze it all in. So you're certainly going through a process of what's called accelerated learning. And we're also catering for everyone's at a different level. Okay? What the program is designed is that you've ideally already watched the home study before you get here. And if you've done that, you'll notice you probably have a greater foundation. If you haven't, you'll probably find it is even more overwhelming because there's some things you're trying to catch up with. But the good news is you can just go back and watch the DVDs, and when you do that, it starts to fill in the gaps for you, and it makes a lot of difference. Make sense? Okay, so what I'm going to run through now is how, in 15 minutes flat, world record time, how to become a billionaire. And then we'll do one final process to lock this in. Now, the reason I want to teach you this strategy is really not expecting you to go out there and become a billionaire. For most of you, it'll just be a couple of things to benefit while I'll teach you. One, for many of you, it would just be curious to know. Who'd like to know how billionaires do it, predominantly? Be just curious to know. That's one reason I want to teach you. The second reason I want to teach you is that the idea is to model. If you can replicate, which you can, what they do on a large scale, on a small scale, and maybe make a couple of $1,000 to a couple of $100,000, in some cases a couple of $1 million, would that be worthwhile? Yeah, so we can actually, there's ways now with technology to replicate the concept of what they're actually doing predominantly to be able to do that. And there's members that have done that. They've made a couple of $100,000s to tens of millions of dollars already from this concept. Okay? So it's not just a piece of theory, it's actually, it can be broken down and replicated. And the third thing, and an interesting thing, because I know many of you are share investors or becoming share investors, what I'm going to share with you is really the flip side, the reverse of the share market. So if you're going to become an investor in the market, you really want to know this strategy because it'll make you a better investor, because you'll see how the game is really played and what game you're actually participating in. And I think that's very invaluable. So let me run through it very quickly. Up until about 4 years ago, I had never met a billionaire personally in my life, and I must have put the intention out there to say, look, I really need to start hanging around people who are playing the game at a higher level, so I can continually to learn and take my financial intelligence to a higher level, and also just learn off these guys, because I love learning. And I was introduced to my first billionaire by a good friend of mine in Sydney, and I was invited to lunch, and this guy was from a foreign country, so he didn't speak English, and so they had their translators there, and they were looking to do stuff in Australia, so they were interested in meeting me. And so I had lunch, and I remember having the conversation, and via the translators they asked me, Jamie, on your current plan, your current financial strategies, how long will it take you to become a billionaire? And I'd never actually thought about that question before, and so I thought, I've never really set it as a goal, never really planned about it, but I thought probably at least 15, 20 years longer, if ever. And he said, why don't you do it in 3 years? And I said, why don't you take more drugs? No, I didn't actually think that would translate well. But if this guy wasn't already a billionaire, you just dismiss it, okay? Because that was so far out my belief systems that I couldn't, so far outside my belief system, so then just dismiss it. But this guy had become a billionaire in less than 10 years, okay? So he had a belief system that a lot of things were very possible financially. And he'd also done it, so he had strong references. So it made me thinking, so what I did was plant a seed. And, your reticular activator system. Did Craig talk about that? I think he talked about it with the youth summit downstairs today. Your reticular activator system is very powerful. Okay, RAS. And it's that part of you, when you set a command or plant a seed, so to speak, of what you might want one day, while you're sleeping at night, throughout the day, 24 hours a day, it's ticking away, looking for any possibility to find that what you are looking for. For instance, if you, ladies, have you ever bought a new dress, say for the Melbourne Cup or for the races or whenever, and then you wear it or you go out somewhere and you start to notice a lot of other women have bought the same goddamn dress. Who's ever noticed that to be true? The dress was probably no more popular now than ever. It's just that you've bought it. Your reticular activator system sees it. It's like you now notice it. Now, subconsciously, you notice that dress everywhere you go. It stands out, where it's probably there before, but you never saw anyone wearing it because you never notice it. Like if you buy a new car, all of a sudden you find, hey, everyone else decided to buy a new car. You think, am I a trendsetter or what? Okay? But because you notice now, things show up. It's just like when you raise your awareness around money, all of a sudden more opportunities start to show up that before were probably there, actually were there, but you didn't actually see or notice. Because now you have greater sensory acuity, you're more awareness. The first step to change is creating awareness. So you're just more aware. Like why does someone like, let's use New Zealand as an example. The richest man in New Zealand is who? Who can tell me? Graham Hart. He's actually one of the richest men in Australasia. And Graham Hart, I think he started off as a mechanic, didn't he? Tow truck driver. Okay? Incredible success story. Now, Graham Hart, New Zealand economy is a fairly small economy, especially if you take the sheep out of it. Okay? There's not much there other than, if you take the sheep out, it's a very small economy. My point is this. I love New Zealand. The point is this, that how come he outperformed so many others as far as wealth? Like same economy, same opportunities as the other 4 million Kiwis, but he achieved so much more financially. Because his reticular activator system was a higher awareness, better strategies too, no doubt, and he noticed things from being a tow truck driver, working all his way up to the huge success that he's had. He also took on a lot more risks than the average person, by far. He's willing to back himself. And as a result, he's produced a massive result financially, like a billionaire, and done very well, because his reticular activator system would have been preset to be aware of that and create a lot more wealth. So obviously that was a seed. When you say the seed's planted, your reticular activator system is now going to work to find that. That's the power of goal setting. Okay? So as a result of that, my mind started thinking, well, if I ever become a billionaire one day, how would I do it? It's a very good question to ask. Before I was a millionaire many years ago, my mentor said, Jamie, ask this question. If you ever become a millionaire, how would you have done it? In other words, start asking these questions, the power of the questions. Okay? how would you do it? So I started generating some ideas. And because I'd been hanging around people who'd made worth hundreds of millions of dollars, I'd learnt a lot how they create a lot of wealth. So I had some idea what it would take to become a billionaire, which I'll share with you in just a moment. And so I started thinking about that. I thought, wow, personally, for lifestyle, I have no interest in becoming a billionaire for lifestyle because pretty much you don't need to be a billionaire to have a great life. Does that make sense? You don't need to. I mean, other than your private Learjet, there's really not much more that, if you're a very well-off person, you don't necessarily need any other than a private Learjet. What else is $1 billion going to get you? Okay. For me, though, I'd be excited by it primarily because my highest value is making a difference and making massive change in the world. I know $1 billion would probably be, a billionaire has probably got more influence and more power than, say, a senator, okay, or possibly even a prime minister. So they have significant influence. So money is power. And money can give you influence, okay? Especially if you do good things with it. So that's why I was thinking with, no offense to Jamie Packer if he ever watches this, it's unlikely. But now that I've said that, someone is probably likely to pass it on to him. But see, we don't want to prejudge people's situation, but Jamie went through some tough times and, was, fairly depressed at one point. And the reality is different. See, actually, his interesting comment was in the paper today. Jody Rich said the most unhappiest man he's ever met or ever knew was Kerry Packer. Now, he has some emotion around that because there's been a big bust-up with One Tel, and Kerry Packer said, I'll have your left and right, what, because you lost a lot of money for Packer and Murdoch. So, but it's probably interesting because if you don't have a strong value system and it's not focused on adding value, that doesn't lead to happiness. You look at someone like Jamie Packer, he inherited $6 to $7 billion. Now, if he was trained or focused and saying, okay, instead of taking on this burden and all this stress and being stressed out and depressed and like really struggling with life, he could go, you know what? I'm extremely grateful. I've inherited all this money. I'm going to dedicate my life to service, and with this $7 billion, I can make a massive impact, and I can be so fulfilled for the rest of my life just helping people. This is what I'm saying here. Now, if that was a mind shift and that was the focus, he could be incredibly happy. Is that true? No depression and stress. You still have some stress, but it would disappear largely because he's on a mission and a purpose of higher value. And he could look forward to it with massive pleasure linked to it. He would have a compelling future. Because it's like, my God, $7 billion. Imagine the joy he could get from the impact he could have. Okay? But that's a different level of thinking and different focus. Instead, what Jamie Packer do? One, he flogged off his father's businesses because Jamie was not passionate about